Come to the marriage. Christ's character is sinless because it does not have the inherited tendencies to sin. Only this character can meet the claims of a perfect law. Therefore, Christ's character must stand in place of man's character as his substitute. Satan wants to substitute the character of man that has the innate desires for self-exaltation as the standard of a perfect character in place of the sinless character of Christ that has no innate desires for self-exaltation. Chapter 3, Man's Substitute. In order for man to have a perfect standing with God, he needs a substitute. He needs constant intercession. In our previous chapter, we reviewed that the reason that Christ's character must stand in place of man's character is because man is sinful by nature. Steps to Christ, page 62. If the reason that we need a substitute is because we are sinful by nature, then the nature of Christ would need to be different in order for Christ to be our substitute. Bible Commentary, Volume 5, page 1128. Be careful, exceedingly careful, as to how you dwell upon the human nature of Christ. Do not set him before the people as a man with the propensities of sin. He is the second Adam. The first Adam was created a pure, sinless being without a taint of sin upon him. He was in the image of God. He could fall, and he did fall through transgressing. Because of sin, his posterity was born with inherent propensities of disobedience. But Jesus Christ was the only begotten Son of God. He took upon himself human nature and was tempted in all points as human nature is tempted. He could have sinned, he could have fallen, but not for one moment was there in him an evil propensity. He was assailed with temptations in the wilderness, as Adam was assailed with the temptation in Eden. This quotation makes it very clear that there is a difference between Christ and man. Christ did not have the propensity of sin, whereas man is born with the propensity of sin. This is the reason why man needs a substitute and why Christ can substitute man's sinful nature. For man to see his constant need of an intercessor, he would need to realize that his nature remains imperfect after he is converted. Steps to Christ, pages 64 and 65. The closer you come to Jesus, the more faulty you will appear in your own eyes. For your vision will be clearer and your imperfection will be seen in broad and distinct contrast to his perfect nature. This is evidence that Satan's delusions have lost their power, that the vivifying influence of the Spirit of God is arousing you. No deep-seated love for Jesus can dwell in the heart that does not realize its own sinfulness. The soul that is transformed by the grace of Christ will admire his divine character. But if we do not see our own moral deformity, it is unmistakable evidence that we have not had a view of the beauty and excellence of Christ. Notice in the above that the closer man comes to Christ, his vision becomes clearer, and he clearly sees the perfect nature of Christ in contrast to his imperfect nature. In order for this quotation to agree with the many quotations about Christ's fallen, degenerate nature, we need to realize that the use of the word nature in this quotation refers to the character of Christ, not to his fallen, degenerate physical and mental nature. It is the character of Christ that must stand in place of man's character. Man does not need an intercessor because his physical nature is degenerate. Man needs an intercessor because his character is sinful by nature. We will discuss this aspect in more detail in our next chapter. Let us contrast the character of man with the character of Christ. Man is born with a desire to exalt self, and that is, of course, since the fall of Adam. This is a defect in his character by birth. That means that the desire to exalt self is in his very nature. Christ did not have the desire to exalt self in his nature. He did not have for one moment an evil propensity. Reading from Child Guidance, page 79. The will of God is the law of heaven. Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing, page 109. The will of God is expressed in the precept of his holy law, and the principle of this law are the principles of heaven. The term will means wish, desire, inclination, appetite, or passion. The law is the transcript of God's character. If we say that the will of God is the law of heaven, we would be saying that the will of God is the character of God. The will of God would be his desire, inclination, appetite, or passion. Notice the character is expressed in terms of desire. The paragraph below illustrates the will, the character of God, the law of life. Reading from Desire of Ages, page 21. I seek not mine own glory, but the glory of him that sent me. John chapter 8, verse 50. In these words is set forth the great principle, which is the law of life for the universe. All things Christ received from God, but he took to give. So, in the heavenly courts, in his ministry for all created beings, through the beloved Son, the Father's life flows out to all. Through the Son, it returns in praise and joyous service, a tide of love to the great source of all. And thus, through Christ, the circuit of beneficence is complete, representing the character of the great giver, the law of life. Christ's character, as we look here at the diagram, illustrates the character of Christ. Every being in heaven is involved in giving. God gives life, not because he wants praise, service, and love, but because he has the desire to make others happy. This illustration of the law is to demonstrate that God is unselfish. As we look at it even further, we can see that every being in heaven operates on the principle that you do not seek your own will or desire, but the desires of others. So as we go into the circle, we can see this. God gives life to the Creator, and his creature then offer praise, joyous service, and love, which return back to God. I seek not my own glory, but the glory of him that sent me. In these words is set forth the great principle, which is the law of life for the universe. The word glory is a term used to mean the character of God. The term will also means the character of God. The terms can be used interchangeable. The expression, I seek not my own glory, but the glory of him that sent me, and the expression, I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father which has sent me, one is found in John chapter 8, verse 50, and the other one is John chapter 5, verse 30, are both expressions that refer to the character of God. Two wills are not being pictured in Christ. All the heavenly beings are pictured as not doing their own will, but the will of God. They have one will or one desire. The heavenly intelligence constantly seek the will of others. That is the law of life in heaven and earth. Desire of Ages, page 20. It will be seen that the glory shining in the face of Jesus is the glory of self-sacrificing love. In the light from Calvary, it will be seen that the law of self-renouncing love is the law of life for earth and heaven, that the love that seeketh not her own has its source in the heart of God, and that in the meek and lowly one is manifested the character of him who dwelleth in the light which no man can approach unto. The word glory in the above paragraph denotes character. A law of self-renouncing love would refer to a character of self-renouncing love. This is because the law is a perfect reflection of character. God's law is described as a law of self-renouncing love. The expression self-renouncing means by definition that you give up your own desires for the good of others. That does not always mean that you have evil desires to give up in order to do good for others. It means you always place the desires of others before your own desires. Self-seeking means you place your own desire first. The expressions self-renouncing and self-sacrificing are describing a type of character. When Christ stated that he did not seek his own will, he was describing his character. Christ was sinless, so he did not have one innate desire to seek his own desires first. The human race is defective in character because it has innate evil desires that seek their own will. This is demonstrated by the life of Paul. Ministry of Healing, pages 452, 453. The life of the Apostle Paul was a constant conflict with self. He said in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 31, I die daily. His will and desires every day conflicted with duty and the will of God. Instead of following inclination, he did God's will, however crucifying to his nature. Let us carefully note some terms used in the above. Paul's life was a constant conflict with self. His will and desires every day conflicted with duty and the will of God. The term will and desires are terms describing character. Therefore, the term self would also describe character because it is used interchangeably in the above with will and desire. Next, the term inclination is used interchangeably with will, desire, and self. Here we see that the old nature, desires, inclination, or self refers to the character of Paul. Paul had an inward struggle with his old nature, but notice that he gained the victory over his old nature. It was this old nature that gave him the desire to exalt self, but he never gave into these desires. It could be said of Paul that he did not seek his own will, but the will of God. The will of Paul was the old selfish desires. It is these old desires that give man the defect in his character, because they naturally want to exalt self. Christ did not have these old desires. All the desires in Christ were desires to help and bless others. In Paul's old nature were desires to exalt self, and this made Paul defective in character. And this is the reason Christ's character must stand in place of man's character even after he is converted. The reason man needs a substitute is because he is sinful by nature. The old desire that man is born with and that he cultivates as soon as he is old enough to make choices is the nature that is defective and needs substitution. As Christ imparts his righteousness, man develops new desires of unselfish, but he must battle the old desires in his nature. It is because of these old desires that man needs an intercessor. To say that Christ had the desire for self-exaltation in his nature would to make Christ's character the same as converted man's. This theory followed to his logical conclusion does away with the reason why we need a substitute after we are converted. We have a perfect standing with God as long as Christ's character is standing in place of our character. Therefore, Satan wants man to believe that Christ's character has the same desires that man has. Those desires are desires to exalt self. In heaven itself, this law was broken. Sin originated in self-seeking. Lucifer, the covering cherub, desired to be the first in heaven. He sought to gain control of heavenly beings to draw them away from their creator and to win their homage to himself. Therefore, he misrepresented God, attributing to him the desire of self-exaltation. With his own evil characteristic, he sought to invest the loving creator. Thus he deceived angel, thus he deceived man. Taken from Desire of Ages, pages 21 and 22. If we believe that Christ had a desire for self-exaltation, then that desire is not sin because Christ was sinless. If that desire is not sin, I can be perfect like Christ with those innate desires. As soon as my character is perfect, I do not logically need the character of Christ placed to my account in heaven. We need to guard against any theories that lead to the logical conclusion that we can be perfect without the atonement or substitute, because those theories are false. May the Lord bless you as you continue to study His Word and answer the invitation, come to the marriage.